agenda. I think that's the latest from recall. Mine latest one was the white one.
Can we have the agendas now with version and date and time published on them?
Might have to.
So that we know which day it is and which version it is and what time.
We just confirm the white agenda we finally landed on after a few misfires. I'm working off the white agenda anyway.
This meeting is completely
So welcome everyone. I declare the Corporate and Strategic Committee meeting of Wednesday the 3rd of October open. Are there any notices? No. Are there any apologies?
I'd note just an apology
Mr. Chairman.
for Councillor Graham, the Chairman of the Regional Council, just out briefly for...
Councillor Graham is dealing with media.
Mr. Chairman, I'll have to step out at some stage in the next half hour or so. I've got to sign some papers.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
And Councillor Bevan, who is...
Councillor Bevan is in
Tending his
Chile.
international obligations.
Yes.
Somewhere on the planet.
No other apologies. I'd just like to, before we get underway...
Could I move the apologies be sustained?
Yes,
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Freudian slip.
So we've had a move that the apologies be accepted. We have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no. Carried. Before we get underway, though, I'd just like to ask if you could just reference...
Thank you, Chair. Just on behalf of the Chair and this, the Corporate and Strategic Committee, ko tā koe mihi kia koe rā e toro, whanaunga, ai te matinga i tau nei whaia, acknowledging the passing of Toro's mother. Ko tā koe mihi kia koe rā. Kei rungi e rā e hora nei, kei rungi i tō marae, kai pā hauwera, me ki rā ngā mahi ngā hikoitanga i tau whaia, i tau wawa e haere kai tu atu. Nō reira ko tā koe mihi kia koe. Ka tangi koe, ka tangi au, ka tangi tata. Nō reira tēnei te mihi kia koe rā. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 2, which is conflict of interest declarations. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? Councillor Belford.
With regard to item 8, the Kahutia discussion, I just indicate that I do have a contractual relationship with Kahutia in terms of my own property, so I'm declaring that, but I intend to comment as I see fit on the proposition.
So you're not seeing it as any barrier to participating?
Right.
Thank you. Mr. Parker.
The same item 8 as Ngati Kahungunu.
And your interest?
We are the owners of Kahutia, the company.
Thank you.
Yep.
Will you be participating in the discussion?
No.
Item 12.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, could just turn the sound up a little bit? I'm having a little bit of trouble today.
Okay, sure.
Item 12,
Mr. Walker.
Director of New Zealand Māori Tourism, and I'm Chair of Hawke's Bay Māori Tourism. And I don't have any association with Hawke's Bay Tourism.
And you see no barrier to participate?
I don't see it.
Yeah, thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 3, which is confirmation of minutes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh yes, sorry. We did need a resolution around a late item tabled, and I'm assuming everyone's received that late item, and that's the notification of transfer of water take resource consent. Has everyone had that agenda item? Does that need to be addressed? Do you need to identify why it's being tabled now?
Not from my understanding.
And then it's just the notice of we've talked
Mr. Chairman, is that item the water take matter? Is that in public excluded or public?
I understand it's in public.
It's in public.
I'm just reading the notice. The Chief Executive advised that in accordance with Standing Order 9.1 Item 7, Tāngata whenua representation on Council and its committee has been withdrawn. So this is in reference to Item 7. So we've had the notice, the late item, I'm sorry, I do need a resolution for that first.
Yes.
So Councillor Dick, you're moving that we accept the late item. Seconder for that, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no.
Yes.
No.
You don't want the late item heard?
No.
That is the majority.
No, and I would have spoken to it if you had given me the opportunity. But perhaps I will now. I like to receive information in a timely manner, and I think there's quite a few agenda items that's not met my fair and reasonable expectation.
Sure. Does it need to be unanimous accepting the late item? It does.
That's a majority decision.
I'm against it too. Same
So
reason.
who's against? Still
So can you advise, is it a unanimous decision required to receive a late item?
I'm not 100% sure.
No.
Anyone help me there?
No, it's usually by majority.
By majority.
But I just caution you here, Chair. I just think, given that we're going to use the rough and ready chopper on this, in or out, I think it would be worthwhile having a discussion amongst councillors, see if we can come to some agreement on how we should handle this. I understand the argument for being a late item and doing it, but I'd like to hear that articulated. I'd like to hear articulated what the concerns are people have against this before we put it to vote, and so we can then work out, can we find a compromise here which we can all agree on?
Sure. All right. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Hewitt, first?
I think I just did.
You did. So it's in terms of the late, having enough time to consider the matter.
Chair, it would be helpful to understand the consequence of us not dealing with this today.
Can you help us there?
Well, I think it would also be, I think it'd be good to have why this has occurred.
Yeah.
So we're not going to hear why this has occurred, and then why it's necessary to do this. And then the third question, the Fenton's one, is what will be the consequence of not dealing with it?
Sure, fair enough.
Good thing. So we get that set out. We're then in a place of being informed.
Thanks, Councillor Barker. Can you help us out, Malcolm? With
Yes, we brought this back. There was a discussion about the question of notifying this application to transfer a water bottling permit at the previous council meeting. We thought it would be astute to take you through the consent decision process and to actually make this decision, rather than just adopt the policy. And there's some legal advice sitting in the back of the applicant's application, sort of giving us some sense that we need to be quite cautious in how we approach this decision. So in terms of time, we needed to get it back in front of the council as quickly as we could in order to stay within the timelines that are running in terms of the decision that has to be made.
Can you just elaborate on those timelines? I think that's the point, is what's the urgency?
We have actually got it on hold waiting for some further information, so the clock is not actually running, but the risk was as soon as it comes back, we've got 12 working days and we wouldn't be able to actually get to council in that time, the next council meeting, to actually make this decision. So we've brought it to the council as soon as we could, but we need the decision basically to follow at the same time.
So essentially, if we don't make a decision, or we don't consider it today, the next opportunity will be the council meeting at the end of the month. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And that's not out of the question, but it will mean that we probably won't meet timelines as far as RMA goes.
And if we didn't meet the timelines, what are the consequences?
They're not great. It's just that we'll. If the decision is not to notify, then we will have fallen behind the decision timeline, and there is a discounting requirement. If for every day that the decision is late, then the applicant can have costs discounted. If the decision is to notify, then basically some of those times can be caught up through the rest of the process.
Could this be delegated to the hearings committee so that you weren't impacted by those timelines?
Well, it could be, but we'd then have to convene the hearing committee, so we haven't.
And the chair is away overseas at the moment.
We'd need a unanimous decision to empower that committee to act on behalf of council as well.
And why would we delegate that to the hearings committee when it's more of a decision for this council? And we also have a view around this council that these decisions should be made where all councils are engaged in them rather than less. So that's our general philosophy. So it seems to my way, but run counter all of those things we've done before.
Chair, I'm curious.
Bailey?
Yep, thank you, Chair. I'm curious to know as to why this particular paper is being brought to the Corporate and Strategic Committee and not to the full council meeting which we had earlier on today.
Look, I think the principal reason for that was that the special council meeting was constituted for a very specific purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look,
That particular item, and this comes to the first available council meeting ahead of that.
look, I'm in your hands as to how you want to progress this. You've got Mr. Walker. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think given we're in the middle of the tank process and given that we have water shortage issues, I don't see that we should be preempting that process by allocating our water overseas when we've got needs here. So that's my issue.
So Debbie's objected to.
Essentially, I'm in your hands as to whether you want to proceed with the late item.
Can I just respond to Toru's point? We're not. The issue here, Toru, is not about whether we make the decision. It's how we make the decision, as I get it. And so what we're suggesting here is that rather than have it made as a non-notified decision, essentially by the officers, we have it as a notified decision, so it then becomes public.
I'm happy with that.
So that's what we're here. This is what we're deciding here. It's not the decision. So if you prefer a publicly notified decision-making process, we then need to deal with this paper today. That's what we're doing.
So Chair, my advice is that we can accept this as a late item by a majority vote of council. However, for the substantive decision to be a vote of council today and not therefore have to go to the council meeting at the end of the month, we will need a unanimous decision on that matter.
If you have it after lunch, then I will read this over lunch.
So there's your answer, Chair.
So well done.
The answer is
Baker.
people have now got comfortable with the decision. I think you're going to find that councillors will be more comfortable with having this accepting this as a late item, and we'll be asking you to take any decision on this after lunch so people have time to read it, and then we will then be in a position to be able to get a unanimous decision. If it's too soon, people will say they'll object because they haven't read it properly.
Sure. Okay, so on that basis, are we comfortable to accept it as a late item, subject to consideration in the afternoon session?
Aye.
Okay, so we've got a resolution here to that effect. Did we have a mover and a seconder for that?
Yeah, we did. We voted on it.
Oh, we did. Okay.
We've carried it. We're now more comfortable.
So we'll defer that item to
unanimous.
item 15.
No, it's not unanimous. We voted against it.
Yeah, we did, but
Go
we've
ahead.
discussed it and I've withdrawn my objection.
It's your objection.
Okay. So
Still carried.
it's still carried. Yeah.
Item 15.
No, we'll do that now.
Right.
We've got another amendment to the agenda as well, so the Chief Executive will address that, please.
Chair, I'd like to withdraw item number 7 under Standing Orders 9.9. That's the Tāngata Whenua representation paper. We are presently in the process of completing a review of the Regional Planning Committee, and we have also recently appointed Mr. Piri Munro as our Te Pou Whakarai, and he has not had an opportunity to have input into these matters. So it's our preference to withdraw this paper at this time and to work through some of the issues around the role and purpose of the Regional Planning Committee relative to the Council's wider business, and also take advice from Te Pou in relation to those issues. So I would like to have that paper withdrawn. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James. So we've got a situation where we're wanting to withdraw that agenda item.
Could we just leave it on the table? Would that suffice?
We could. It's possible that we'll come back with further information and a recrafted paper. So my first preference would be to withdraw it.
Okay.
So can I have a...
Chair, where does that leave Mr Walker today.
Right there.
Mr Walker already has appointment to this committee. That's based on a previous decision. This is the corporate and strategic as opposed to the council.
Ah, right.
Yes.
Okay.
So can I have anyone prepared to move? Councillor
I'd
Wilson,
move that.
happy to move.
Happy.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. All those in favour of
Aye.
withdrawing the paper will say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no. Carried. Right, we'll move to agenda item 3, which is confirmation of the minutes of the meeting 13th of June. I'm taking it people have got and had a look at those minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes of that meeting? It's a way back, months back now. Living wage implications, water management audit, etc. Appointment of tourism directors, statement of investment policy, treasury policies, etc. So any corrections to those minutes? There being none, can I ask for someone to move that the minutes of that meeting are a correct and accurate record? Have a mover? No one? No one wants to move it?
They don't want it discussed yet.
Wasn't there, Councillor wasn't there.
Yeah, you know.
Councillor Bailey, thank you. Moved, seconded. Prepared to second the minutes. Well, I'll second them.
You were there, were you,
I
Chair?
haven't got the minutes.
Okay. So I'll move the minutes. Those in favour of receiving and accepting the minutes will say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no. Are there any matters arising?
Just one item.
Mr Walker?
On occasion, your meetings here, or the council meetings have dragged on, and I've had to wait around this considerable time.
Yes.
So I think perhaps they could be maybe at a better time so that I can participate.
Sorry, I'm not quite with you.
I think I had to wait about an hour the last time, and before that, the council meeting went on for so long, I gave my apologies. But if we could have these meetings organised at a time where it's not, where I'm not waiting around for the council meeting to finish.
Fair enough. Councillor Dick will be with you on that matter.
Thank you.
Sorry, my name being used in vain?
Yes. It's just about expediency of meetings, Councillor. So,
Oh, yes.
Yes. Well, you'll agree with Councillor.
Oh, absolutely. A short meeting is a great meeting,
Yes.
isn't it?
I love that. Yes.
Not for this lot,
We'll now move to agenda item 4, which is the follow-up from the previous meetings.
So just a small number of those, Chair, and I think all of those have been actioned as noted in the agenda papers, so we'll take any questions if there are any.
Any questions on those? 1 to 6, items 1 to 6 on page 5. Can I have a mover then that the follow-up report be accepted? Councillor Belford.
I'll second.
Councillor Graham. Those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no. Carried. Let's move to agenda item 5, call for items not on the agenda. Are there any items that you want to deal with not on the agenda, either of an urgent nature or of a minor nature on page 7? Issues? Great. Okay. So we will take the late item as item 14 in that case. I'll now move to
I don't know who it is, though.
first decision item. So that's agenda item 6, page 9.
The all-powerful Finance, Audit and Risk Subcommittee.
Yes, indeed.
Other councillors shudder. Anticipation.
And look on upon and on in awe.
Oh,
Jess, are you able to take us through that?
Sure.
I thought you would chair it.
Well, I can do if you like, but
I'd like to hear your report.
I'd like to hear the dulcet tones of Miss Allen.
Okay, I can give a quick update. So the Finance Audit and Risk Subcommittee considered the 6 monthly report on risk assessment, of which there was a reasonable amount of discussion and debate around the reporting into the future and any changes that would be incorporated through the restructure of the organisation and the appointment of new positions. We received a verbal update on the process of the appointment of the independent member of the subcommittee, which continues in process. Applications have now closed and we'll commence reviewing those. The internal audit update, we didn't deliver a report to the Finance Audit and Risk Committee meeting, and the health and safety report was deferred to November to allow for HR staff members' input into the report for full reporting. We had a discussion around Treasury reporting, which will incorporate the review and the performance of the managed fund, which we put in place over the next few months. We had a very brief update on the Resource Management Information System implementation, which is the IRIS software. The project continues and is tracking well, and we still expect the consents and compliance functions to be going live with that new software in November. We had an update on the annual report, which will forms part of the agenda item for today to be considered.
Thanks. Thank you, Jess. The committee will have obviously been through that financial risk agenda thoroughly, but we've ended up with a significant issue to deal with, and that arises in the annual report update. Now, I just wondered who's going to take us through that.
The annual report item is an item on the agenda for today. Manton's here to talk to us.
Okay.
It's item number 11.
So that's
we don't need to.
But that'll be considered
it's later on.
later on.
Okay. Are there any questions arising from that Finance and Risk Audit Committee?
I have a question. So have you appointed independent?
No, we haven't.
Oh.
So we've received 17 applications.
17?
So we've re-advertised and we've had a greater number of applications this time around, which is good. And we'll be considering the applications.
And you're just going to do one? Just going to do one?
Do one.
Of the 17?
One appointment.
One appointment.
That's one position. I think we improved the ad somewhat to make it a little bit more interesting in terms of the nature of the role. The first time round it was a bit
Quite hard to make audit and risk interesting to accountants.
Not in my book.
Okay, so you've got 17 good applicants. Well done.
Chair, just annual report update. Is there a chance that the auditor can get in front of full council at some stage, or
Absolutely.
is that normal, or we seem
Sure
to?
it is. What can we do there? Can we?
We can certainly invite him to council meeting at the end of the month, potentially.
Thank you.
Come to this
I will
meeting.
do that. I'll take that note.
Okay. The annual report.
It's item 11. Can I move the report be adopted?
Yes, certainly, Councillor. Got a mover?
Except we have a one with multiple choices here.
Oh, yes, that's right. So we've got
Item 3.
Recommendations.
Recommendation 3.
We've got to make a call on the committee structure, the reporting. Do you want to walk through that?
Sure. Next. Manton, do you want to come up and talk to the annual report?
Just that question. Look, Chair, I appreciate it's a little bit confusing because the annual report update paper doesn't actually have any either or recommendations in it, and this is left hanging. As I understand it, we've subsequently received legal advice following the preparation of this paper suggesting that disclosure is not appropriate
Per person. I think the advice was that we could certainly include the total
for each committee.
for remuneration for each committee, but the suggestion was preferably not to list by name.
Apart from, oh, sorry, beg your pardon.
Mr. Warwick?
3.4 I would not be in favour because I don't actually claim for a lot of my stuff. So.
Councillor Belford.
As a paid elected official, whether I earn my keep is often questioned, including by other members of this council from time to time. And it's a burden I bear as an elected official. And if I'm going to sit at the table with other individuals who have equal standing in determining the course of our decision-making, I feel they should be subject to the same scrutiny as I am. And therefore, I would only support a provision that did identify who is paid what.
And I strongly endorse that.
One I can support, but not.
Can I just
And I'm not sure any of these options actually, 3.1 might say that. I'm not clear that it does, though. A list of individual names, the total remuneration paid, I suppose that is saying total for the committee, not by individual.
List of individuals.
But if you're going to sit on the RPC, which is what we're talking about here, right? And have an equal say in matters affecting the course of Hawke's Bay, and you're being paid to participate in that process, why should you be treated any differently than I am?
Chair, can I just clarify that the legal advice that was opined to this did indicate that there is grounds for not disclosing if the council wishes. However, that does need to be weighed against the public interest in disclosure. So the way I'm reading this is that...
Do whatever we want.
Correct.
Well, I think you shouldn't pay the bill for that. I thought it was a dreadful letter. It's neither for nor against, it's bloody waffle. What's the point of having an opinion when you don't get an opinion?
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you, Councillor. We could have come to that conclusion just reading the legislation ourselves.
You may not. I just thought it was dreadful letter.
We haven't received, we haven't nominated these recommendations yet. We haven't moved them. Are there any other questions particularly in regard to those, the update 3.1, and we need to make a decision as to which one of 3.1 to 3.4 we're going to choose. So are there any other questions of staff before someone moves?
I'd like to make an observation. I just think this paper, on reflection, given the point that Tom has made, is poor. It's inadequate. It does not do the job that it should do. And I thought the paper we're waiting to come for some other recommendation from, in addition to the letter here, we thought we would get a legal opinion. Also, I thought we were going, from the committee's discussions, we were going to go to the Office of the Auditor General, etc. So a range of opinions. So we come to something. I saw this as just one paper here we come through, and I thought we were going to get a pretty clear recommendation. Well, I left the Finance Audit and Risk Committee, but I felt we were going to get a pretty clear recommendation from our staff as to what course to follow and why. That's not in here, and this paper doesn't reflect that either. So I think we should go back to where we were, and I think the staff should, in addition to this opinion here, get an opinion from the Office of the Auditor General on best practice, from the Ombudsman, from the Privacy Commissioner, from the independent person on the street, and then after distilling all of that, come back and tell us what they think and why, so we have a recommendation that we can then sink our teeth into. Noting the concerns as identified by Councillor Belford is that all council, everybody who comes to this council table to make decisions should be treated equally, impartially, on the same basis. And if you want to treat some differently, then you better come back with a recommendation that solidly justifies that. That's what we got to.
Question,
Any other comment? Councillor Wilson.
Is there anything stopping us in 3.1 saying for each committee include a list of individuals' names and individual remuneration? Oh, that's a bit aggressive today, the old microphone.
Expenses.
Well,
and expenses. Full stop.
So, look, that was the purpose of 3.3, I think. Which was for each committee member. Look,
it isn't.
No, it's not.
No,
It's
that's
still a summation, and then, which you're left to divide by the number of members. to
If
come
it
up
said
with.
all individual Tāngata whenua
Total
representatives,
remuneration.
that would get us there.
Yeah, so look, I think 3.1 must have been in relation to the original instruction, which I thought we got pretty clearly, and we prepared a list of everybody's names, everybody's remuneration as individually received. Look, I'm unclear as to why this has got as complicated as it is, and you haven't got clear advice. I will ensure that for the council meeting at the end of the month, that you do get the advice, including advice from OAG, which I understand we have actually received and hasn't been provided, and we will come back to you with a clearer picture on
James,
this.
with all due, and Chair, through you, with all due respect, do we need advice? Let's just do it. I mean, Rick made the point that we're all treated equally, and I bet you I'm paid the most, and I bet you I have the most expenses of all of you. So I'm quite happy to say that's it. I think as individually we go through this is, and anyone who's paid by the council in terms of governance role should be, as Tom said, treated equally on this matter.
Mr Chairman, there's a question of
sorry,
materiality.
Councillor Dick.
There's a question of materiality, and I would say that 3.2 does the job, to be honest. And the prospect of consulting far and wide on this issue is, I mean, it's a reasonably important issue, but it's not
Not in the
of
ditch
vital
stuff.
significance.
Well, look, we've got the schedule of recommendations in front of us. Is anyone prepared to move, or is there a mover, for example, here's some voices for 3.1. Is there anyone prepared to move in any particular direction?
I'll move 3.2.
I'll second that.
For each committee, including...
Can you explain the difference between 1 and 2? It's
The difference is that apart from the chair and the deputy chair, the balance of the members' remuneration would be lumped together. Their names would be mentioned.
I don't agree with that.
no, not at all.
I don't agree with that. I think we should all be standing in front of the public and saying, I earned this much and my expenses were this much. And all of us are the same.
So he has a motion and a seconder, we have to vote on it.
That's right. So
Take a vote.
Let them speak, and then we can move to amend.
you just hang on. Hang on.
Chair, could I just offer one more thing? So I've just cited the advice from the OAG, and unsurprisingly, it's not dissimilar to the legal advice, which is there's a balance of considerations which the council needs to make about, privacy of persons versus public interest. So it's not entirely helpful. So I'm not sure that further advice is going to help you, and I think staff advice will be broadly the same, as that you've got to balance a bunch of things. But I'd make the observation that the principal issue around protecting the privacy of staff remuneration is that it's highly variable within a range, particularly based on issues like performance. When it comes to a set fee that is provided for, there is no performance issue that we're having to protect people's privacy for. The fees are what they are, and therefore I don't see any reason why full disclosure is problematic.
And costs.
Sure. So we've got a situation. We've got a mover and a seconder.
No, it's not seconded.
It's now been withdrawn.
He withdrew the second.
And he's conflicted anyway.
Well, that's his choice, though, as to
We're all
what
conflicted.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. No one in this conversation is not conflicted.
That's right.
Look, it's
So
been withdrawn.
I will move that that our policy be to fully disclose the compensation paid to individual members of all.
And I think that's what 3.1 says.
gotta be-
It doesn't say that, but that's,
Actual.
Actual.
but if the sentiment is
Are you able to craft that a little more precisely?
adequately,
So it's 3.1 with that with
as
that
long as it's
slight
interpreted
crafting.
to provide for individual disclosure.
Yeah. Councillor, would you be prepared to move 1 to 3.1, 4 and 5?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. The second for that, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Belford, would you like to speak
No.
to your motion? Councillor Wilson?
I'd be interested to see how the wording's crafted, but nothing further to add. No.
Sure. Any other speakers?
Yes.
Mr. Paku.
Just in regards to expenses, just to bring to councillors' attention that mileage becomes part of that
Sure.
consideration. So some councillors or some members of committees will be at a disadvantage, especially if they're travelling large mileage, and it starts to distort that figure, and people start to think that they're receiving extra income. In actual fact, it's compensation for mileage. So I think there needs to be a bit of thought put into that. I've seen that happen, where someone who has a high mileage, their expenses look totally out of order to someone who has a very small mileage.
I think it's a very good point.
Just by saying, I would hope that when the disclosure comes, it's compensation that's in two parts. To cover what Mike, as I said, there's what people get paid and what they get reimbursed for mileage. And my understanding in the public is it's reimbursement for travel costs. Everybody just accepts it for what it is. There's no grumble about that.
So, Chair, on the table that we've got presently drafted, we've got meetings attended, meeting fees, travel allowances, all as separate columns, and then total remuneration.
Does that satisfy your issue? Yeah. All right. Look, we've Councillor Balfour. Do you want to reply? No. We've had a mover and seconder. All those in favour of those various recommendations, including 3.1, which will be slightly modified. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no.
Aye.
Carried. Was that a no? That was a no. Do you want to record it?
Just on principle.
Okay. So we'll have we'll show of hands, please. All those in favour will raise their hand.
He hasn't called for a division, Chair.
He's got a call for a division.
I thought he did.
Oh, he said he wanted them recorded.
No. Okay.
No, it's no such thing. He calls for a division, we then record the votes.
Did you call for a division, Councillor Dick?
No, I didn't.
No.
Okay.
So
Let's move on.
the recommendations are carried. We can now move to agenda item 8, aren't we?
Yep. Quite lucky you've got Ricky today.
Yes, very fortunate.
Well, let's keep going. Very fortunate.
Look, I'm assuming who's going to speak to this?
I'll speak to this one, Chair. So, councillors will be familiar with the agreement by Council recently to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Ngati Kahungunu Iwi Incorporated around the Kahutia Accord for regional afforestation, particularly of erosion-prone land. In that context, we've received an expression of interest from Kahutia Limited, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Ngati Kahungunu Iwi Incorporated, to lease from the council a portion of the council's emissions trading scheme New Zealand units or carbon credits for a period of 10 years. And the terms of that proposed lease are set out within the paper. At the moment, the council is not making use of its carbon credit portfolio in any active way. They're simply sitting there and have been appreciating in value as the value of units on the New Zealand emissions trading scheme exchange have been appreciating. Under the proposal, the council will effectively be getting some income that it doesn't presently receive by way of interest on those units, and will be putting them to a use by enabling Kahutia Limited to commence the process of afforestation of erosion-prone land. The company has indicated to council that it has some land holdings presently lined up for afforestation in the 2019 planting year, and for it to place some orders for nursery stock and to commence preparation of that land, it would need an indication of the council's willingness to enter into a lease agreement sooner rather than later. So this paper seeks the support of this committee for those negotiations to be taken to a point of some conclusion that would be presented to council at the council meeting at the end of the month for final decision making. So this is really just to bring councillors up to speed with what has been proposed, seek any feedback on that proposal, and seek your endorsement for us to continue those negotiations.
Mr. Chairman, I fail to understand how this advantages Ngati Kahungunu Incorporated. Okay, they effectively acquire by way of lease carbon credits that they pay rent for, but they've got an outgoing, how does that enable them to actually
Good
proceed
question.
with plantings?
Good question. Can you just walk through that the equation that they function, how these operate?
So what, excuse me. So what Kahutia Limited would propose to do is they would sell those units on the New Zealand Emissions Trading Scheme market immediately, and that would yield somewhere in the order of $2.5 million. That would enable them to establish forest on a range of properties that they have lined up. And they would enter into arrangements with those landowners that would ensure that the carbon credits accrued as a result of that planting comes back to Kahutia Limited and then ultimately comes back to the regional council. So it's a way of capitalising the upfront land acquisition and land preparation and planting, and then the units get paid back. They are acting effectively as the de-risker of that in the middle because they're putting their assets on the line, so that if for any reason those forests don't yield the carbon value that has been leased to Kahutia, they are required under the draft contract which has been suggested, they will pay the difference at the market value of the day, and they put their assets in behind that.
But they don't own the credits. They've only got a leasehold interest in them.
That's correct. So, they have they will be under this proposal effectively selling it, but they will retain a liability back to us for the units.
I can't see how you can sell something you don't own, other than if it's specifically noted that the interest is a leasehold interest, in which case the realisation should be, I mean, it was commercial building or something, the realisation would be far less than the freehold value.
I guess it's a way of structuring it so that we don't have to sell the units to them and they have to pay us the capital for the capital value of those, and therefore not achieve the capitalisation of Kahutia Limited, which is effectively what they're seeking to achieve.
Why don't we sell them ourselves and use the money for our projects?
Well, that is an option available to council, and I've noted in the paper that the opportunity cost is that we don't do that. I guess at the moment we haven't got a strategy for selling our units. Under this model, I guess the benefit is that we get the units back at the end of the period. So there's and they are secured in the meantime. So they're working for us in terms of building the partnership with Ngati Kahungunu under the Kahutia Accord. They're working for us in terms of enabling the afforestation of erosion-prone land, but at the end of it, we are guaranteed to get our units back. If we do sell them, then all we're doing really is raising some further cash. And at the moment, as council will appreciate, we've got $50 million in cash, which we're currently managing in a diversified way. So cash is not a requirement of the council at this moment.
Councillor Hewitt.
James, given the indication that carbon credits the price of them is going to increase exorbitantly in the short term, why would we sell them? Why would we lease them for someone to sell? And who are the directors of this company?
Look, I believe the directors are Dan Druzianic, Tane Randall, and I think Nahiwi Tomoana. I'm not sure if there's any other information on that. That's my understanding, but that would easily be determined on the company's register. The reason with the forecast increase in the price of carbon under this proposal at the end of 10 years or at any period in between, when under the deal Kahutia is required to pay us back units, they have to pay us either units on the day, which will have the market value on the day, or a cash equivalent based on the spot value of the day, which simply means that any capital gain or any increase in the value of the carbon over the 10-year period, we're guaranteed to still receive. So it's a way of ensuring that we don't miss out on the future value, but we haven't sold our holdings in the meantime. And I think given the forecast outlook for the price of carbon, we wouldn't want to be selling now anyway unless we needed the money. And so a lease is quite a good middle ground, if you like, to use an asset which you otherwise want to hang on to and get it working for us, rather than selling it.
So essentially, it's a means of accelerating our planting regime, leveraging those that holding that we've got. Is that how we're working? But we wouldn't lose equity.
To see if there are willing buyers for leasehold interests in carbon credits?
Look, I understand that, yes, they have, and frankly, there's high demand right now for NZUs. There are a large number of emitters with liabilities looking for units. So selling these units at the current market price, which is a little over around $25, is not a difficulty.
So can you tell me how I want an answer from you from a member of the public. I had a phone call last night from somebody who's just taken on a neighbouring property, purchased it. He's wanting to plant up 200 hectares in natives, 140,000 trees. He's spoken to council who've said, yes, we can do this with you, but we want the carbon. Council wants the carbon. So he said, well, forget it then. But if he entertained that idea, how you will then explain to him, we're going to take the carbon, but we're going to pass it on to an iwi entity.
So the carbon we're talking about here is carbon that sits in our existing portfolio from our assets, our forests. It's not proposed that any of the carbon that is accrued through our own afforestation on private land, our grant funding, would go to this purpose. The reason currently that our policy, and it's only our current policy and it's under active review, is that we hold the credits, is that if we are granting cash grant of ratepayer funds to landowners up to 75% of the cost of establishing the forest, the default position is that the ratepayer should retain the carbon value. Now, that's actively under consideration at the moment, but until such time as council takes a decision that it wishes to provide subsidy as well as leave those units with landowners, that is going to be the default. One of the reasons why we've got this default position and haven't considered this policy in greater depth at the moment is that this is a matter that's under active consideration for central government in relation to their funding. So I'm aware of advice which is going to ministers in the next week or so, which is exploring whether the Crown also should be retaining the carbon credits. That has been the default under the afforestation grant scheme. You get a grant to establish a forest on your land. The Crown holds, at least for the first 10 years, the carbon value for that. Now, the Crown's considering, particularly in terms of native planting, given the slow rate of carbon sequestration and the economics of natives, whether it should provide a grant, much like the council could provide a grant, but also let the landowner keep the carbon credits. It's just simply a greater cost to both the taxpayer and the ratepayer, and it's a question of how far you want our money to go and how generous you want to be to landowners. So once the Crown's made its policy decisions, which we'll be doing so in the next month, we'll come back to you with some advice about whether we should have back-to-back arrangements in terms of our policy mirroring the Crown's policy, particularly if we're going to leverage the Crown's funding alongside ours.
Mr. Walker.
Yeah, just follow up from Councillor Rick's question. Why aren't we selling them ourselves? Get the money. I mean, you
can't hear, Tara.
You can invest. Oh,
just speak up a bit.
Yeah. Why aren't we selling them ourselves? Because only about 24, 25 at the moment. Probably the highest they've been for a long time. And you can invest the money yourselves. It'll get 5% rather than 2%?
So, look, the reason for that is that the forward forecast over the next 5 years is for the NZUs to go to $28, and the recent report from the Productivity Commission on transitioning to a low-carbon economy has much higher ranges out there on the future. So we think that this is an asset which will appreciate in capital value, and we wouldn't recommend to the Council that it sell any of its NZUs at this point in time. The Council has allocated around $30 million in its long-term plan for grant funding for forest establishment, and we've also indicated that the Council's willing to borrow up to $100 million to invest in commercial forestry. Capital to encourage afforestation is not currently a need for the Council, so we don't need to sell these units to raise capital to do anything that we've got on the books at the moment.
Anything else?
Yes, because I believe that the Crown is going to hold on to those carbon credits for the new plantings anyway for over 5 to 10 years.
So look, just as I explained to Councillor Hewitt, that's a matter that the Crown is actively considering. In my capacity as a member of the Ministerial Advisory Group on Forestry, I am privy to advice to government on that, and I can say without breaking any confidences that those matters are under active consideration and a range of options are being considered.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Under 8.4, and James, you mentioned that this lease will be secured by over the assets of the Kahungunu Asset Holding Company. Are you comfortable that the assets are sufficient to cover the debt that will be on our books?
Very much so. I understand they hold more than $100 million worth of assets, the Kahungunu Asset Holding Company, including fisheries quota and land holdings and buildings, etc. So it more than covers this.
Thank you.
And I'm also aware that the directors of Kahungunu Asset Holding Company have resolved to provide this security.
Councillor Wilson.
Just in real simple terms. So we lease the credits, they sell them, and then we wait until they sequester 100,000 credits. That's how we get our credits back, isn't it?
Essentially, that's
out
correct.
Of new plantings.
Correct.
That's it. Okay. So what else do we get out of the Kahutia Accord? I thought we were in it together.
Yeah, so look, at this point in time, we're still working on the investment case for commercial investment in forestry, which is the Right Tree, Right Place project, which Council has endorsed HBRIC undertaking. Our lead advisors on that, Sion, P.F. Olsen, currently working there, procuring GIS data, etc., out of Council. So that piece of work's being undertaken, and as noted in the paper, until that is complete, we don't have a sufficient body of information to go to the public on a special consultation, which we would be required to do a significant investment and to create a council-controlled organisation to undertake this investment. So that's still further down the track. Kahungunu are aware of this, and so what they're trying to do is get on with some of the interest they're getting from landowners now and get the job started, and this is a way of enabling that to occur.
So there's a couple of bits missing here for me. I mean, how have you cited any of the proposed land areas, etc.? I mean, how long does it take to sequester 100,000 units over how many hectares of land and how many years, and depending on tree type, etc.?
Yeah.
I mean, how long are we expected to wait for our return?
So we've seen some properties. We've seen some farm environment plans, including one for a Huia station near Whakaki, which aligns nicely to our water quality objectives that we're working towards in that
plus
catchment.
Land in Whakaki, not just Huia, plus land in Whakaki.
Yeah, and so other land holdings adjacent to the lake, which we've been told are available for planting. We've got further work to do around the calculus in terms of whether or not the sequestration rates and the hectareage match what is being leased, and that would be all part of the analysis that we would do before bringing this back to you. I think it's fair to say that the way that the proposal is structured is the risk on that sits with Kahutia Limited, not with Council.
Just humour me here. Kahutia Limited, what's its hold? What assets does it hold now? It's just a shell company at the moment, isn't it?
I believe it has been capitalised with some cash. The total quantum of that I couldn't advise council. As the Kahungunu Asset Holding Company is also a subsidiary of Ngati Kahungunu Iwi Incorporated, it's part of a group that holds substantial assets.
So why wouldn't they put $2.5 million in and get the return that we're hoping to get?
That would be a question you need to put to them.
No, I don't need to put it to them.
Yeah.
Mr. CE, you do.
Well, that's that's one of a range of things we need to work through with them in terms of some of the detail here.
But this is too undercooked for me at this stage. I'm not saying never, but I'm not saying now. I don't get this.
I just checked. I see Dan's not a director.
Right.
No, I've had a look at that too.
JB is okay. I understood you well. I know that Dan has been providing financial advice to the company, and I assumed that he was doing so in his role as a director, but presumably as financial advisor.
One last question, Chair. In regard to growing, plant stock, etc., what's the timing? Can someone tell me what the timing of that is? I mean, what one of our land management guys, when would they start? Would they propagate seeds now, or how does all that work?
For next season?
Yeah.
So,
and actually, can they get it done by next season?
Well, look, one of the reasons that this has been brought to us with a request for progressing this at this time is the imperative to place orders with nurseries now. There's a degree of sort of liquidity in the nursery market in terms of available planting stock, and it will remain to be seen whether the total volume required can be secured. Certainly the council itself has trebled its own orders from nurseries, and there is a degree of ramping up going on across the nursery sector, but it is true that this will take time. I don't anticipate that all of Kahutia Limited's plantings will occur next year. It will occur over the next few years.
James, I just wonder whether you could help me with, if you like, the strategic fit of this and meeting our objectives. How does this sit with what we want to do by way of planting?
The target of this land is erosion-prone land. We're looking at essentially using all the tools in the toolkit to address erosion-prone land. We've got grants, we've got partnerships, we've got aligned organisations such as Ngā Whenua Rahui, which is probably quite a good example if we look at the Whakaki catchment, where we've got partnership with the Ministry for Primary Industries, Ministry for the Environment, with Whakaki Marae, Ngā Whenua Rahui is involved, and there's a range of different funding mechanisms that are being applied to dealing with different aspects. So where there's a commercial forestry opportunity, we're looking at how we can support that. Where there is grant-funded afforestation required, looking at how we can fund that. Where there's a Mānuka revenue from Mānuka planting, that's being built into it as well. When there's a payment to landowner required to secure some land, Ngā Whenua Rahui coming as part of that mix as well. So, look, to deal with the water quality issues we face and the erosion-prone land that the region's got, we're taking the view, certainly as staff, and we're taking it from the different policy papers that have been put to council over the last year or so, that there is a desire to deploy a range of tools into the landscape that meet different landowner objectives. And this sits in that nest, if you like, of interventions, and it is one additional partnership that we have.
I'll move.
Can I just ask
Sorry,
a
just
question?
one question from Councillor Barker, and then any other comments? Councillor Barker.
A couple of questions to the Chief Executive, if I may. Following up on the question from Councillor Bailey, can you confirm to this council that given the substantial amount of assets in backing this proposal, that the council can be assured that this investment has little to no risk?
Well, certainly that's staff view at this point in time, and what I propose to do is before Council finally commits to this is that we receive independent financial advice on that question and that we get a written view from that independent financial advisor that the risk is low.
Okay, so this is basically a low to no risk motion here. The second thing is, and following up from the question from Councillor Wilson about what about these other options, is it not correct that we're presented with a proposal, we either go with it or we don't? It's not a negotiation thing, it's just, here's an option, do we want it or not?
Well, certainly this represents an opportunity that has been brought to us. The other opportunities that have been brought to us particularly relate to land, and it's the sorts of things that Councillor Hewitt is referring to. Our catchment advisory staff at the moment are building a large database of landowners that are putting up their hand for various different afforestation interventions, and we're working through that in a systematic way. That will create an entire portfolio of different interventions over time.
But here's an opportunity to be put in front of us. Now, the third question I have for you, there will be people outside watching this decision. And this decision will be, would this decision be cast as a test of this council's credibility and its willingness to engage in partnerships with others for its long-term objective in reforestation? That here we have presented with us an initiative from outside, which we think at this stage is low to no risk. People want to go and do something, and how we react to that will be an indication of how we'll be perceived in terms of whether we're going to walk the walk or just talk.
Look, I think if the Council does resolve to proceed with this arrangement, it will demonstrate a degree of flexibility by the Council to think about all of the tools in its toolkit, as well as simply taking ratepayer money and providing a grant to a landowner, which is part of what we're doing. This is another way of leveraging the total assets and tools available to Council to achieve the objectives, and this in partnership with Ngati Kahungunu Iwi Incorporated, who I would note have as beneficiaries all of those who can demonstrate their lineage as part of the Ngati Kahungunu Iwi. So it is a large number of our Tāngata Whenua that are affiliated with this institution. It's not a small and exclusive group of people. So this represents, I think, a very useful demonstration of partnership with Tāngata Whenua in the context of afforestation.
Yep. Thank you, James. Is there any questions? We've got a mover. Do you?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
So the second are there. So we've got recommendations to Council. So this is the second debate comes, and in the intervening time, James, you're bringing the lease documentation, etc., to Council and report on that. Is that?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So we've got a mover and a second. Councillor Graham, are you wanting to speak to the recommendation?
I do. This is another part of a journey which we're on. We have, and it's a journey of partnership. We talk a lot about partnership. We talk a lot about, and we have the treaty claimant groups, and they're always talking to us about partnership. I'm not sure what they mean about that, because I'm still getting my head around that. But this is Ngati, which is Ngati Kahungunu Incorporated. And this, they have brought to us a business proposition. And it's pretty sound business proposition, because if you think, what do we want to do is we want to plant trees. That's what we want to do. What do they want to do? They want to plant trees too. And there was a lot of doubt that they would find the land. Well, they've been out looking for land, and they've found a substantial amount of land, not just Māori land, but they have a lot of Pākehās who have approached them and said, and substantial Pākehās who have approached them, landowners, and said, can we be part of this? So they have land in Central Hawke's Bay on their own farm. They have 200 hectares there they want to plant. They have land at Ocean Beach, and they're dealing with a major landowner at Ocean Beach, and they're dealing with not only a large Māori corporation at Ocean Beach who want to be part of this. They're dealing with Ohuia, who they have close association, of course. So the chair of Ohuia is the chair of Ngati Kahungunu Incorporated, their business vehicle. So they're talking about large plantings in Wairoa that are on the Wairoa River, and the hill in particular will be known well to Fenton. It's a bit of an eyesore at the moment. They're talking about planting that. They're talking about planting all the riparian plantings at Oahuia, all the coastal bits, doing scattered plantings throughout the hills. They're talking about another large planting next to Whakaki. So these are people that have been out there doing the business. And they want us to help them do that by putting up some credits which are lazily lying in our balance sheet. And they're saying to us they will give us a return on those credits. And not only that, in 10 years' time, they will give us those credits back, and they will have accrued balance sheet value when they give them back. And they're not only doing that, they're guaranteeing that value. And just in case there's a fire or something else, they're saying they will guarantee the value of those credits against their balance sheet. You couldn't ask more from these people. They have done a phenomenal job, and we go back. We have to consult on this. From the very first, they wanted us as 50-50 partners, and they're still saying, "We want you guys in, and you come in at a nominal rate when you're ready." Because you think Maori politics is difficult? Try our politics. It's taken. They got their heads around this as much quicker than we did. And around the actual the machinations of doing a commercial joint venture, and we're still struggling with it. We have to consult, and I understand that, and we will go out and consult. But the final result of this is that we have Kahutia Accord, we are 50% shareholder, so that takes 50% of that risk right out of it because we're leasing to ourselves. And we go forward as one of the vehicles that we go forward. And as James mentioned, we have the other vehicles. We have our 30 million, which we're hoping to leverage off the government, get another 30 million, which we're going to get no return from, except planting trees. And some of us around this table thinking planting trees is the return we're looking for. But I'm looking for something else here. I'm looking for a partnership with a Tāngata Whenua group, as an initial jump. And if other groups, treaty claimant groups, come to us and say, we want a similar partnership, I'll be really keen to go there as well. But this is a first step into an area that we've been trying to do and trying to say we want partnership, real commercial partnership, but also, well, guess what? We're also planting trees, which is what we want to do. So there is risk in this. Of course there's risk. But you got the banker's question. The money's not at risk. There's all sorts of other risks, and will the trees grow? Will there be a drought? Will there be all these other things? There is risk, perception risk, and all sorts of other risk. But we need to take a step into this. A little bit of risk. We need to have the courage to take this first step on planting some trees on a serious basis and a serious partnership with a Tāngata Whenua group.
Thank you, Councillor Graham.
Could you indulge me with a question for the Chairman?
Sure.
A real commercial partnership, how do you reconcile that with a 2% per annum return?
Well, they want, the balance, we don't get any return at the moment. You realise that, of course. They sit on our balance sheet without a return, and we wouldn't sell them because carbon credit's going like that, and will continue to go like that. So at the end of 10 years, we're getting the balance sheet value with the additional, with the accrued value. So we're getting them back.
You don't see the 2%, the difference between 2% and what we could get as a return as a subsidy?
Well, you would have to sell them to get a higher percent.
That's right.
How would you get, someone said we haven't been out to the marketplace. Well, we haven't been out to the marketplace, and there could be some cocky out there who would pay us a bit more. But, there's a whole lot of issues. You've raised one yourself, an issue yourself, that our team and upset them, said we want the carbon credits, because there's all sorts of models. This is just one particular model. And they want us in as 50% shareholder. And I personally would love to be 50% shareholder, and I'll be pushing that as we go down that angle.
Right.
And if Toro wants to come up as a 50 and offer us something at Parawera, love that too.
Councillor Bailey, you're seconder. Can you, would you like to contribute?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Not quite as verbose as Councillor Graham.
You say eloquent.
Eloquent as well, yes. But I certainly think this is a pretty good business deal standing on its own. I accept that the 2% may not seem like a significant return. However, it's better than what we're receiving at the moment, which is nothing. But also with those added benefits of the issues that Councillor Graham spoke about, which is we building this particular partnership, which is really important looking into the future. And we're also getting trees planted, which is also the direction that we've been. The public, I think, certainly wants us to go in. So, in terms of we're getting all those additional public good benefits coming out of this particular deal, and at the same time, financially, it's as safe as houses. So it's all good. Whenua, get on to it.
Councillor Bailey. Councillor Wilson.
Chair, I think we're a little premature here. A couple of reasons, a couple of quite pertinent reasons. The main one for me is the council hasn't even finished its own process of right tree, right place yet. And yet here we are, we're going to dive into bed with these great, wonderful aspirational plans about planting trees everywhere, etc. I just don't get it. That does not align with where we may end up. And I think this is crazy, doing it right now. I'm not saying don't do it, far from it. I think the relationship plan and idea is a stunning concept, but not now, because there's so much still to be done. Our staff still haven't come back and told us what this thing looks like yet. They have no idea. They're working through a process. They will get there. The other point I'll make, and this is probably the big one, we're going to give away all the available carbon that we have. Not give it away, we're going to lease it and we're going to get it back. I get all that, but it's going to preclude us from talking to any other partner. And let's face it, we're doing a fair bit of planting in Wairau, so tātou to me should be part of that conversation, and yet actually we'll have no available carbon left. It will be gone. It will be tied up with Kahungunu, first up, best dressed. Nikki, I should say. So I'm not saying never, but I'm saying not now, and I can't support this as it stands today.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other? Councillor Belford.
I see this as a bridge to what's next. We have indicated strategically that we wish to invest $100 million, subject to public consultation, in this type of program. The staff has said that the plantings that are envisioned here are consistent with what our broader strategy will be in terms of right tree, right place. And this is simply, by the time we get to being able to actually spend cash, the $100 million, we could be on our way here with getting trees in the ground and getting on with it and demonstrating that we are serious about it. So it seems to be a commercially risk-free proposition, and it will jumpstart a process we've already committed to in our long-term plan and in our memorandum of understanding with Kahutia. So why not?
Thank you. Councillor Dick.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to abstain today because I don't see the full picture. Maybe that's my problem. But also, I think the paper is a little light, and I'd like to see something more detailed that covers more bases at council. So I'll abstain. To be honest, it looks like social credit to me at this stage.
Councillor, I'll just ask the Chief Executive as to what he would anticipate reporting back to Council at the end of the month by way of the detail you're seeking.
So look, at this point in time, we haven't received a full contract proposal, so we've received a bare bones, if you like, of a contract. So there is more detail for us to scrutinise. And the point of this exercise was to indicate that we'd received that, and we've got the shape of an arrangement, and it was an opportunity to seek from this committee in particular, given this committee's responsibility and its frequency of meeting, an indication of whether this is the sort of thing that the council would entertain. Once we've received that detailed contract, I will secure independent financial and legal advice and bring both of those, including the contract, forward to council for consideration. So there will be more, substantially more information to come.
Helpful.
Any other comment? Councillor Barker.
Oh, thank you. I've listened to this great interest. Yes, we don't have the detail, we don't have this, we don't have that. There's an old saying, it's wrong to be right too soon. So we can all wait until we've got everything, but the opportunity is past. The thing is, it's here and now today, and I'm perfectly happy with with some of the vagaries about it. Firstly, we've been assured that whatever we do here is secured, so nothing at risk. So the Chief Executive has given us assurance that he will have that clued up, and no doubt if the Chief Executive feels that there's some doubts about the security, he will say so and the thing will stop. So this seems to me a low to no risk thing. The second thing, more important for me, is does something. Are we here to do things? At the moment we've got some money, carbon credits sitting on the books doing nothing. And we've all said we need to plant trees. We've all said we need to do these things. We all said we need to sequester carbon. And someone comes up and says, look, you lot are doing little to nothing over here. If you do this, I'll guarantee you that, give you a return on stuff, give you things, and we'll plant some trees. I'd have thought we'd have leapt over the table, shook their hands and said, great, someone's turned up to do something. Well, isn't this what we're about? And now we're all nervous of our own shadows. I'm surprised we get out of bed sometimes. But look, I think we should support this. It's initiative, it's getting up and doing stuff. It sends exactly the right message. And if we're not prepared to move and move quickly, then what's the point of us being here? We need to have endless reports and endless communication for something which we're assured is going to be guaranteed. The other thing, when you look at the resolution, it says request the Chief Executive provide a draft contract, legal advice, etc., to consider decision making be recommended. So we've got all these things to come yet. What is the problem here? I'm bewildered by this. I'm absolutely in favour of this. People want to come along and say to us, we're going to help you make your plans come true. We're going to do stuff. I say, get on board, let's go.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comment before handing back to Councillor Graham? No other comment, Debbie?
Well, thank you, James. I look forward to you coming back to us with some flesh on the bones of this and not a 2% subsidy. I expect that in terms of ratepayer returns for their strategic assets, that you'll be able to draft something up a lot stronger than 2% in order to get my support next time around, possibly.
Thank you, Debbie. Councillor Graham, would you like to?
No, I have no further comment.
Okay. Look, I'll put the recommendations 1 and 2. All those in favour of those will say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no.
No.
It's
Division
called for.
Abstain.
All those, and abstention. All those in favour will raise their hand. All those against will raise their hand. And the abstention from Councillor Dick recorded. Was that an abstention as well? 2 abstentions, yeah. So the recommendations are passed. We're now, what's our timing like? We've got a straightforward one with the schedule of committee meetings, and then do we want to have a crack at ethical investment policy?
I'll move the meetings, Chair.
Say again?
Oh, second.
So we've got a mover for the meeting schedule. Yep. Councillors, are any
Do we all have to go to the drinking meetings, Chair?
Yes, I think the drinking meetings are really good. I'm on those already.
So we've got a... Is there a high level councillors, please? Councillor Graham, order.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Is there any issue with the meeting schedule as tabled?
No. I tore it out. Oh, come on.
I think Councillor Wilson has indicated interest in being on the drinking committee.
The drinking committee?
Well, I'm just interested in the terms of reference.
And there's a pre-qualification for change. So there being no issue with those, and forever hold your peace, we will approve those. So we've got a mover, Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor, sorry,
Just
Mr
a
Walker.
question, is the planning the RPC, is it?
What the value is?
Yes, RPC.
Just on that, we just noted that the first of the year is planned for the day after Waitangi Day. And so just take some feedback from the committee as to whether or not you feel that that would be appropriate. Waitangi Day, I think, is on the Wednesday this year.
What's inappropriate about it?
Well, there's no meeting there's a council meeting on the 30th of January. And
All right, the
then
next one, are we?
the next meeting, the next planning meeting is on the 7th, which is a Thursday, as opposed to a Wednesday.
It doesn't, Mr Chairman, it doesn't allow for the Māori committee
To have a pre-hui,
the day before.
unless you did it on the Tuesday with Waitangi Day in between.
It seems a bit bizarre,
Yeah,
travel-wise.
well, that's problematic, obviously, so.
Well, I thought a lot of people would have got back from Waitangi by then anyway.
So the possibility is that we have the committee meeting on Tuesday and pre-hui can occur on Monday. So, given that it's on a Wednesday, people presumably won't be linking it with the weekend, particularly in terms of a long weekend. So
They will.
They will.
Really?
Yeah.
I wait.
Take the whole week.
Annual
They
leave
will.
with it,
People,
drag it out.
Well, look, how about we do Monday, Tuesday, and
the 4th and 5th.
yeah,
Put my apology in here now.
any other soundings?
I just think the Waitangi weekend, the weekend that Waitangi Day is on is probably. People disappear off to Waitangi for all sorts of meetings up there, and you never see them till the end of the weekend. That's the truth of it. That's what happens.
People from here?
People from here. There's a lot of Māori leaders head off up north and go to Waitangi weekend for all the meetings up there.
No, we're the second biggest Waitangi Day in New Zealand here.
I'm well aware of that. I was there from when it very started.
I know you were.
Right at the very beginning, but I'm just saying to you, to have anything to do with treaty issues on the week of Waitangi Day is problematic. Avoid it. There might be an issue come up and everybody treeks up to go to the iwi leaders meetings at Waitangi with the Prime Minister, etc. They'll get up there, get involved in conversation.
Councillor, are there any alternatives that we can go with?
Well, look, I'm just looking, and unfortunately, we've got a pretty heavy meeting agenda, given the number of committees we've got running at the moment. I'm also mindful of the fact that we may well still be deliberating on tank. And time is of the essence, so I'm wondering whether we need to look at the third week of January.
Well, I would say, why won't you swap the Māori committee meeting with the planning committee meeting? If you're so confident it's going to be here, I think that the planning committee meeting is the much more, in terms of our processes, more strategic and more central to it, because decision making we want out of that. I thought you'd swap the two, or E&S.
Well, we could switch Māori to the 19th of February and do as you suggest. Councillors would just have to be prepared for 2 very heavy days between
But we'll be
planning
well
committee
rested up having the
ES.
Waitangi week off.
That's right. So, do you want to come? This is a recommendation to council. So, do you want to come back, subject to that confirmation with this? So we can proceed with a recommendation, and if we can confirm that change or potential change at the council meeting.
So, Chair, I'm happy to do so. I do just want to test the room very briefly. Given the issues we have with progressing the tank plan change, is there any willingness to convene a planning committee meeting in January?
No.
Well, you can.
I need a rest.
There'll be
Yes, we
willingness,
can,
but the attendance will be very poor.
Yes, there's crayfish here, maybe.
No, I wouldn't worry about that.
All right, let's just move on then. So we'll come back with an alternative recommendation at council as to the date, the timing of that, whether that's a swap of Māori and planning and/or shunting it out further into February. Give us your best advice at the council meeting.
Or you could swap the planning committee for the ENS on the 13th.
Councillor Hewitt.
I would just like to, as I request every year, and it hasn't been well actioned, but stress the importance of field trips, and in terms of our decision making, I'd like to ask that is given consideration to in our annual schedule for next year, and I'll flag that we were supposed to be visiting a lot of plantings up towards Tūtero.
Hapua. Yep.
That still has not happened, so the lack of field trips and learning opportunities has been sorely noted.
Can we therefore give some contemplation to that and come back with some recommendations to council? Councillor Barker.
I love the 13th of March. Where are we going to? Where's this going to be undertaken?
Yes.
And is this the chief executive's bank card coming out
yes.
here?
No.
Some beer hall you've got in mind? Can we make suggestions?
Thank you for that contribution, Councillor. We've got to move in a seconder. Councillor.
I'm sorry, is the 31st another option for the planning committee?
Of January?
Yeah.
We're going to have tank finished by Christmas.
Well, look, it's certainly an option from a staff point of view.
Does that suit you better than putting it on the 12th of February?
Well, every day matters at the moment with respect to tank.
Well, look, let's come back with those.
So that would require, I guess, the pre-hui for Tāngata Whenua reps to happen simultaneously with the council meeting the day before.
Let's come back with some recommended dates. Perhaps that's circulated well in advance of the next council meeting, and any feedback received can be tabled at that point. Are you comfortable with that, councillors? We've got a mover and a seconder. Those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no. It's carried. Whatever that was.
I love this confused chairmanship. It's great.
Look, let's. We've got the ethical investment policy.
It's at lunchtime, isn't it?
Is it that or lunchtime? Can I get the union delegate to advise us as to...
Union delegate, please.
Yes, it's time for lunch.
About clock round
Chair,
I recommend at least an hour.
given the
on full pay.
Chair, given the union delegate's last interventions regarding the drinking committee, I would have thought that a very quick decision on the ethical investment policy to exclude alcohol would be a very easy decision to make.
I'm highly opposed to that.
Look, is there a lot of contention around the ethical investment policy?
Yeah, there is.
Councillor Bailey, you've got a few issues.
Yeah.
Anyone else got some major things to say? And we know Rick Barker's got issues, but
Okay.
There's nothing, you can't ever get a paper through like that, James. It doesn't work like that with this
look,
council.
let's break for lunch and see how our ethics hold up after lunch.
So what time do you want us back?
Is it 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.